let's talk about Katana Network. This is a really bold experiment in the crypto world, and it's trying to fix one of the oldest and frankly most annoying problems in all of DeFi, liquidity that's here one day and gone the next. I mean, if you've spent any time at all in DeFi, you know this question. You've felt this pain, right? It's the one problem that just seems to haunt the entire space. Capital gets spread super thin, and all those juicy incentives, well, they seem to disappear just as quickly as they show up. Just think about it for a second. There are literally thousands of different applications, and each one has its own little isolated puddle of liquidity. This fragmentation just makes everything inefficient. You get high slippage on trades, and it means capital isn't really being put to its best use. And then you've got this whole issue of mercenary capital. You know the drill. A new protocol launches, they're throwing around these massive, often inflationary token rewards to get users in the door. But the moment those rewards dry up, that liquidity just vanishes, leaving the whole ecosystem high and dry. So this is where Katana's core idea comes in. What if you built a system from the ground up that wasn't just about attracting liquidity, but was actually designed to capture and recycle it, like a machine built specifically to generate real sustainable yield by holding on to its own value? Okay, so to really get what Katana is trying to do, we have to appreciate just how massive this challenge is. We're talking about the fundamental, unsolved liquidity problem in DeFi, and trust me, it's a big one. So at its heart, Katana is a blockchain, yeah? But it's one with a very, very specific mission. The whole thing is designed as this experiment to create a self-sustaining economic loop, what a lot of people call a flywheel. The idea is, once you get this wheel spinning, it just keeps going on its own, gaining momentum and reinforcing itself over and over. And this right here is a super important point. Katana's not trying to be another chain with a dApp for everything under the sun. Nope. Their strategy is all about depth over breadth. They want to have just a few core protocols, but with liquidity so incredibly deep that they become the absolute go-to spots for high-efficiency trading and lending. So how in the world does Katana plan on pulling off this super ambitious goal? Well, let's get into the mechanics of what they call the flywheel experiment, because this is where the design gets really fascinating. The engine really comes down to three main pillars. First, it concentrates all that capital into a few top-tier protocols. Think Morpho for lending and Sushi for trading. Second, it has this cool vault bridge that automatically puts your assets to work generating yield the second they arrive. And third, and this is the secret sauce, it takes the fees generated from all that activity and reinvests them to buy up its own liquidity. They call it chain-owned liquidity. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit on how these three pillars actually click together, because it's not just three separate things, it's the way they interact that creates this powerful cycle that, in theory, just gets stronger with every single transaction. So here's how that loop works. A user comes in, they trade or lend, and that activity generates fees. Simple enough. But instead of those fees just going to validators, the system uses them to buy its own LP tokens from its T protocols. This means the chain itself becomes a permanent liquidity provider. And what happens when you have deeper liquidity? You get better prices, less slippage, which of course attracts even more users. And so the flywheel just spins faster and faster. Now, this all sounds fantastic in theory, but let's get to the big question, the one that really matters in DeFi. Is this model actually sustainable? How does it really stack up against everything else we've seen? And this comparison right here shows the huge difference. On one side, you've got traditional DeFi, which basically rents liquidity by printing inflationary tokens. That creates these artificial APYs that, don't last. On the other side, Katana's model is about generating income from real protocol activity, trading fees, lending interest, and then using that revenue to own its liquidity. It's a fundamental change from renting capital to owning it. The native token, CAT, is obviously central to all of this. You can stake your CAT to get something called VCAT, which is basically your voting power and your claim on the system's success. It gives you a direct say in how this whole economic engine runs, and a share of the real yield it's creating. And this project didn't just pop up out of thin air. It was launched back in 2025 after being incubated inside the Polygon ecosystem, which is a pretty powerful network. That gave it a really strong technical foundation right from the start. And the interest was huge. It pulled in over $200 million in pre-deposits. And ever since, it's been rolling out its integrations with these big DeFi players. All right, so we've seen the theory and all the potential upside. But to be fair, we have to look at the other side of the coin and talk about the challenges. So let's weigh the very real risks against that massive potential. There are 5 big hurdles here. First, this whole system is complex, and that can be a real barrier for people. Second, it's super dependent on getting enough total value locked, or TVL, to get that flywheel spinning in the first place. Third, competition in DeFi is just brutal. Fourth, the real yield is only real if there's real, consistent activity generating it. And finally, if we hit a bear market where DeFi usage just tanks, so does Katana's entire revenue stream. So this all leads to two very different possible futures. The bull case is that Katana absolutely crushes it, becoming a critical piece of DeFi infrastructure, a true capital efficiency machine that brings in serious professional money. The bear case? It's just too complex. It fails to attract enough liquidity early on, and that flywheel never really gets up to speed. It becomes another interesting but ultimately niche DeFi experiment. And that quote really just sums it all up, doesn't it? A clever economic design is one thing, but in this space, the only thing that really matters in the long run is whether people actually show up and use it. Adoption is the ultimate judge. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. Is Katana's depth over breadth strategy the right way forward for DeFi's next chapter? Or does the real strength of decentralized finance lie in its chaotic, vibrant, and sprawling diversity of thousands of different applications? It's a debate that's really about the future of the entire space.